Impeachment is a political process, and the ballot box is a political process. And at this point, we're less than a year from the election. I have a hard time rationalizing in my head, given what we know about what happened in Ukraine, whether you think it's a quid pro quo or not. Why should Congress do this when the voters can do it? Because it's the rule of law. They pound their fist on the table. Rule of law, rule of law. That's me pounding my fist on the table. That's what I hear from all my friends. If this isn't impeachable, nothing is impeachable. I don't know. That to me sounds like the people who in 2016 said, if you're not voting for Trump, you're voting for Hillary. Well, I didn't vote for Trump and I didn't vote for Hillary, and he still got elected. This is the rule of law. And if you don't back impeachment, well, if this isn't impeachable, nothing's impeachable. The impeachment clause is meaningless. And aren't you a constitutional? That sounds very much to me like the arguments from people in 2016 who were yelling at you if you didn't want to back Hillary or Trump. Let me throw out a novel, crazy idea to you. Just this is gonna rock the world of some of you. Some of you are going to be really upset with me for saying it. What if something that's impeachable 2 years ago is not impeachable now? Well, what if something that was impeachable 2 years ago is not impeachable now? Now, how could this be? The rule of law, the law hasn't changed. Yes, but impeachment's a political process, is it not? This is what we're hearing. See, I think both sides are trying to have it both ways. You've got people saying, we need to hear the whistleblower. We need the whistleblower. Well, we got to know the whistleblower. And the other side is saying, well, this isn't a criminal proceeding. But the president has the right to face his accuser. Exactly. This isn't a criminal proceeding. If this were a criminal proceeding, the president would have the right to face the accuser. But this isn't a criminal proceeding. We have other firsthand accounts. We don't need the whistleblower. Yeah, okay. Well, based on that logic, we don't need impeachment. If this is a political process, it's not the rule of law. It's not a court process. We don't need impeachment either. We're less than a year from the election. Let that political process choose it. See, what we're arguing over is which political process should we use to beat the president, essentially. And Democrats are saying right now, here and now, use this process, beat the president, convict him, throw him out of office, be done with it, and then we'll have the election. And I think more and more in my head, the way I think about this, let the voters do it. Gather up all the evidence you want. Gather up all the evidence and make it a campaign spectacle in 2020 that the president engaged in a quid pro quo and he tried to tar and feather Joe Biden in 2020 by pressuring a country to investigate him, and make that your campaign. The president can't be trusted with another term of power, unaccountable, unbeholden to the voters. But if impeachment is a political process, and it is, and no one argues about that, everyone agrees it is a political process. If it's a political process, then you have to examine the political ramifications of it. And I think at this moment, this country is so divided, all of the people demanding that the president be impeached are the same people who demanded he never be elected. Not a single person has been convinced otherwise, and they're not even trying to convince those people. They're disparaging those people. They're ridiculing those people. They're highlighting the people in the cult, saying, well, it depended on who he shot on the street before I decided whether or not he could have shot the person. But that person, of course, was trying to work themselves out of the question that was a trap. It was an absolute trap. The country is so divided, and there are so many people who hate the president, who will never give the president the benefit of the doubt, and contrast that, there are so many people who love the president and will never question the president. This should be decided by the voters, not by a group of Democratic congressmen and senators who have fundraised on the idea of impeachment. You see, here's the thing. Let me put it to you this way. The grand jury, per se, is the House of Representatives, and it goes to a trial in the Senate where the Senate serves as jurors. Now, I can tell you, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, they've all been out there saying impeach him. You had members of the House saying impeach the blankety blank, that's what they were going to do. And so how can the president get a fair trial in the Senate when Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and the like have already come out and said he needs to be impeached, he needs to be gone, this is the way to do it? The Democrats respond, well, this is a political process. It's not an actual process in a court of law. Exactly my point. So too is voting at the ballot box. At least then you have the voters who can make the case, and then you have the voters deciding, as opposed to a group of partisans in the Senate who have been fundraising on the idea. If you can't understand why half of this country looks at this process and thinks there's something broken about it, and that it was it was already rigged to begin with, you're not understanding the fundamental dynamics in this country right now. The country is supremely divided, and it's divided on things like this, and the impeachment process is only going to make it worse. There are ways to remove the president. You just got to wait until November of next year to do it. The people who want the president removed yesterday are the people who didn't want him elected in 2016. They haven't convinced anyone to go with them yet. You haven't convinced, the Democrats, for God's sakes, they haven't been able to convince some of those 19 Republicans leaving the House of Representatives who hate the president. Most of them hate the president. They don't like the president, and they're no longer beholden to the president, and there's nothing the president can do to them now because they're leaving. And the Democrats could not even convince them to side with them. The Democrats, if they rush this, they're going to screw it up. And right now it appears they're rushing it. If they take their time, it's going to spill over into primary season next year for the Democrats. It may impact Iowa. It may impact New Hampshire. It's on Mitch McConnell's schedule. They do it after the Christmas holidays. It starts up the second week of January. If it takes 5 to 6 weeks, like the Clinton impeachment did, they're going to be missing primaries. Because the senators who are running for president, they have to be in the Senate for the trial. They can't skip. The Senate Sergeant at Arms can round them up. So why disrupt the process? Why disrupt everything that's happening? And just settle this at the ballot box. Listen, I understand, and I don't want to make a lie to the people who say this really is a rule of law situation. The president engaged in a quid pro quo. He tried to have a foreign country investigate a political opponent for 2020, and we should reject that. And that's why we need impeachment. I get the argument. I really do. But you could make the argument to voters in 2020 and have voters reject the president over that issue. What sets a better precedent? A partisan Democratic Congress, House of Representatives, that's been wanting to impeach the president since the day after he was elected in 2016, doing it? Or the voters who elected Donald Trump rejecting him in 2020 for the same thing? Which sends a stronger message in the future? And again, if we were doing this last year, wait for the election wouldn't be an issue. If we were doing this last year, waiting for the election, we wouldn't have that argument because we would still be 2 years from it. But we're less than a year from the election. The Democrats waited this long to do it. Can they not wait less than a year to beat the president at the ballot box? A nation is divided. Our nation is divided. And there are half the nation looks at this as the Democrats' desperate attempt to oust the president. Let the voters try to do it in November of next year. You take that off the table. But the Democrats trying to do this is going to look to a lot of people like the Democrats can't win next year. And they're trying to sabotage the president now through a political process. Not a judicial process, a political process where half the jurors in the Senate and half the House of Representatives has been out to get the president for 4 years. So it's not a fair process. And the Democrats say, well, it's not a court of law. It's a political process. Exactly. This is just a circular argument. Yes, exactly. It's a political process. So too is voting. Let the voters decide